Good afternoon. We interrupt your regular programming to bring you a special program to provide an update on the weather situation that is currently impacting Grenada. I am Philomena Robertson, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister, and in studio with me this afternoon we have the Minister with responsibility for information and disaster management, Senator Winston Garraway. With him, we also have the National Disaster Coordinator, Sylvan McIntyre, and Inspector Trevor Rodney of the Royal Grenada Police Force, who has responsibility for community relations. Senator Garraway, can you please inform us what is the current status?
Good afternoon, Philomena, and good afternoon to the listeners and the viewers of this program. As it stands at this point in time, yes, the country has been experiencing quite a lot of rain from early morning to as we speak. And as a result of this, we have experienced quite a lot of flooding, landslides, and the likes throughout the country. It is a moment when we ask the nation to take note and to listen to the information that is provided by NaDMA and of course the Royal Grenada Police Force, because our intention is to ensure that we save lives and property, and with what is happening at this point in time, there is a need for us to take stock and to ensure that we are safe.
Now, government workers have already been dismissed from duty. Why was this taken, and what's the next step?
Well, based on the information we've received from the Met Office as it relates to the weather pattern, we're likely to see more rains for the rest of the evening into the night and up to tomorrow as well. And given the fact that we have seen quite a large number of slides and flooding, traffic interruptions and the likes, we thought it's necessary to ensure that we give the officers that time off to go home to ensure that the children are safe. As you know, schools are on vacation at this point in time, so most of the children are home, not being fully supervised, and even though they have some supervision, parents will want to be there to ensure that they are safe and sound, and most importantly to ensure that if they have blocked drains around the properties, they can clear them at this point in time, because we know with all these rains and the waters, how much more destruction and damage it can cause, and it's better to ensure that our people are safe rather than sorry.
Now, we have addressed one category of workers, those being public officers. What would your advice be to members of the private sector?
In as much as when we say the public officers, they have families and you want to ensure that they are protected, equally so, members of the public sector, the children are at home as well, and they will want to ensure that they are protected and they are safe. And in as much as we have given the time off to our public officers, we're asking and we're calling on the business community at this point, the private sector, to do likewise and to release their officers earlier than per usual. I know it's some minutes to 2 at this point in time. They will have to do some probably protecting of the equipment and the likes and so forth. So we ask that they do that as soon as possible, and between 2 and 3 they should be all sent home. I would want to recommend to ensure that at least they are safe, they will get home safe. And coming to think about it, to get out of St. George at this point in time is serious problems, and persons having to travel into the country areas, it will take them more than the regular time on the road. So getting them off even at 3, they may not get home probably not until after 5. So if you could send them off now, it will be better for them to ensure that they get home during the bright time, you say in the early afternoon, to at least to ensure that they can do the necessaries to protect their properties.
Thank you very much, Senator Garraway. Now that we have established what the situation is on the ground, Mr. McIntyre, I would like to turn to you. There have been many images circulating, and I'm sure persons are concerned about the kind of impact that we're seeing. What has NaDMA been able to confirm as of now?
Okay, good. First, we'd just like to again say that we welcome the move the decision by the state mechanism to ensure that people by latest 3 o'clock are out of the workplaces to take care of the things that we've been having calls about. As it stands now, we've been having calls from around the country. In the area of St. David's in particular, we've had a number of landslides occurring in that area, flooding in that area as well. The police have at least confirmed that there are a number of reports of landslides, roadblocks, as a result of landslides and trees that may have fallen, and as a result of rivers that have crested and gone over bridges, etc. Having considered all of this, we suspect, based on the information provided by the Met Office, that this weather condition will continue for some time still. So we are advising people to be very cautious, to still be on the lookout for further land slippage that will occur and flood in areas. It is something that we advocated, that we said people should have done because we are in the hurricane season. Some of the slides and blockage and flood that we are experiencing could be as a result of some actions that people feel to have taken. We've seen some of the water that are coming into the roads, etc., have been as a result of block drains, and in some cases we have seen construction debris and instruments, material that are producing some blockage to these things. So we are expecting that to continue for some time, as I indicated before, but if all the intervention and people take some precaution, we know that we can alleviate some of the pain and suffering that they can endure for longer.
Do we have the figure as to the actual level of rainfall that we have experienced in the past 24 hours or so?
The Met Service endeavor to give a further update and forecast at 6 p.m. this evening, and I'm sure they would again reiterate that the forecast indicated that cloudy, overcast and widely scattered showers were expected, and possible thunder showers. We can safely see that we may have had some thunder showers and more are expected, but as I indicated before, this evening we will get a further projection as to what is likely to happen, so people can be on the guard for more rain later on.
And what at this point would you like to say to persons? We often think that without a storm or hurricane, we're really not having any weather impact. But we have seen more and more instances throughout the Caribbean where heavy rainfall is creating significant impacts for economies.
We are hoping that this, what is happening now, could be used as a rehearsal or as an exercise for further things that can happen or likely to happen. And so it's an opportunity for people to look at their preparedness plan, what they have done so far and what they have failed to do, that they will get into doing it. The stuff that they would have bought before, it is very likely that we may lose power, dams may be blocked, water would be cut off, and communication could be a challenge. We had a situation where reports have indicated that because of the lightning strike, internet access and some communication capacity has been impeded. So that is likely to continue throughout, and so people should look at what they have in place, their plans, whether they have containers to store clean water, the food that they bought for the hurricane season, they can beef that up a bit, have some more placed in there. And because of the landslides, we may have further obstruction of movements of persons getting to and from work. Areas, particularly we know the West Coast is prone to rock falls, landslide, and even some of the rivers can block some of the access. So people may not have access to certain basic conditions and utilities during this period. And again, as I mentioned before, if people had adhered to the warnings that we gave, the preparedness measures, there would be less discomfort. So we're hoping that people could look at that and treat this as an indicator of things to come if it happened, that we are in a position to deal with it. So the psychological effect would be minimized to a great extent.
I'm glad that you raised the issue of interruptions to service such as telecommunications and electricity. Has NaDMA been in contact with the relevant authorities in terms of restoration, possible timeline for restoration of these services?
We cannot say at this moment that there is any confirmation of direct interruption. There is a possibility, Minister. I don't know if you would like to speak to this a bit, if there's any indication that is likely to happen. But when you have conditions like this, there's a high possibility that those interruptions can occur. I have not directly spoken to any of these utility companies, but it is a high possibility that can happen.
Well, yes, I have had one report as it relates to the electricity company, and in as much as the power plant is located in the Queen's Park area, and given the level of the flooding, there was some discussion as it relates to interruptions. As a matter of fact, the I know the hospital grade was down as a result of the flooding. So they were basically on backup power. And generally, looking at what is before us and how much the area is flooded, they were looking at even probably more shutdown later on today. This is something that we want to, as you raise this, to say to our nation. It's important to ensure that you have your emergency supplies in terms of lighting and so forth, batteries, candles, and the likes, because that's a possibility at this point.
Thank you very much, Senator Carey. Inspector Rodney, we've left you out of the conversation a bit thus far, but I would want to bring you in here. What, from the perspective of the Royal Grenada Police Force, are the important things that's happening now?
Well, several hours ago, the Royal Grenada Police Force has activated its emergency center where we coordinate our response mechanism, and that has went well, because one of the major challenge at the moment is traffic. And of course, we have all over the island, we've had all officers alert and managing the traffic arrangements, and of course reporting to us at the center what has happened and coordinating responses. We have done a number of rescue efforts in particular in the River Road area and in Woburn, where a landslide affected a house. The officers have assisted in evacuating personnel from that house. And of course, right now officers are on the ground managing the traffic arrangement, because from the amount of slides that we've seen, it is going to pose a serious traffic issue. We want to appeal to drivers and motorists that they should exercise extreme caution. Here is a time when you need to be mindful of the fact that, notwithstanding you may have the right of way, but based on the situation, just giving up the right of way to allow the flow of traffic can really help. I've noticed that is a consideration that has to be given at this point in time, depending on what is happening, because there are several slides, even though they're small, but of course they can cause congestion. We're asking also that if it's not necessary to be moving to and fro with your vehicles and so on, to avoid that, so that the traffic can flow smoothly. And that is going to be a challenge going forward.
What advice would you give to persons? I know you ask them to minimize, movement if it is not necessary, but sometimes in these situations, persons put themselves in unnecessary danger, yes, and in so doing, they endanger the lives of the emergency response officers.
Of course.
So, would you make a special appeal to persons to stay out, particularly of flooded areas?
Yes, of course. We've been doing that this morning, and several of the radio stations we've called in to make the appeal that persons shouldn't venture, because we've had reports where persons attempted to pass, motorists attempted to pass while the areas were flooded, and they pose some challenges. And River Road again is an example of that. And so we continue to appeal that if the place is flooded, based on what has happened, the volume of water that went down, you don't know what happened to the road, because you can't see the road actually. So you should, if it's necessary and you have to move, be extremely cautious. If it's not necessary, avoid using the roads. A report was made of persons interfering with the traffic signs that are placed to regulate the traffic. We're asking motorists, members of the public, please do not tamper with the signs that are placed. They are for a very good reason, to help everybody to have easy access in this situation.
Thank you very much, Inspector Rodney. Mr. McIntyre, I'd like to come back to you at this point. The level of inundation and impact we're seeing, how does that compare to past experiences?
The assessment is yet to be conducted fully, but we've had similar occurrences, and earlier on this year, we had some rainfall that gave us a semblance of what we are experiencing today. In the south of the island, we had traffic congestion that led up to 3 to 4 hours. People could not have gotten out of the area. But one year we had some rain in October that came down very torrential all at once and had some problems as well. I just want to remind people that, as was indicated before, this should not be a surprise. There are a couple of things that are happening One, people need to listen to the authentic source of information, and people have to get used to listening to our local weather station. And with all credit to the local Met Office, they did say to us that we were going to get rain. As to whether or not the language has to be coined differently, saying to people that you're going to get heavy rain, thunder will come, lightning will flash. Maybe in that tone, people may need to understand. But I know they did say that scattered showers, widely scattered, and possible thunder showers, which indicate or really and truly substantiate what is happening now. Going forward, there are a couple of safety measures that people need to adhere to. And there might be places where power lines may come down as well, and they might be energized. And this is one of the reasons why I'm sure Grenada will take some precautionary measures to de-energize power lines in some areas. And so people should be mindful that they should not enter into flood water, and they should not tamper with down power lines. One of the disadvantages with trying to get through flooded area is that when you have a vehicle that goes in, it only takes a couple of inches of water to create some level of buoyancy, and that vehicle will become unstable, could run off the road, and could create accident. You did mention that people should not move around unnecessarily. They should allow the police and the emergency people to do what they have to do. It is not a situation, as so Senator would confirm, that is out of our ambit of control. We are doing our assessment. We have already rendered particular assistance in some areas to people who said that they needed some things to happen. So people needed assistance in clearing some blocked areas, and so the agency have been providing that. We'll continue to be on the alert. Our district coordinators have been calling in and giving information, and I must commend members of the general public. People have been using social media, sending in photos to us in some areas, letting us know what's happening, and we've been in very close communication with the police to advise people on the traffic issue, as well as we would give on the overall safety issue. And so going forward, people should use again this opportunity to just build on their preparedness things as we go into peak hurricane season. I can take the leverage to say from the Met Office that this is not a tropical storm, this is not a hurricane condition. Rain and tropical wave and depressions, they are something that we are used to. They would create heavy downpour and lots of rain and flooding and landslide in some area, and we should now be prepared to deal with the issues as they come through. And Senator did allude to the fact of having access to information, lighting, etc. We encourage people to have some way of getting information, having a transistor radio that is battery operated, and an expansion of that is to have solar powered devices that you can get it from the sun. If the battery, you don't have electricity to have these charged, solar is a very good option that people can use. And again, we have been considered to be credible. We continue to maintain that level of credibility in terms of information. We ask people to lean on us and depend on the information that is coming from the source that says National Disaster Management Agency.
Thank you very much. Senator Garwe, I think I would come to you in closing. We are still in the midst of this event, this weather event, but we also have to look ahead as to what do we do when it's all over, what happens then. Can you speak to that?
Well, I want to start by saying we are just 1 month into the hurricane season. Basically, 2 months, to finish June and July. What is important for us to recognize at this point in time, the inundation that we have seen, the heavy rains and the floods, the landslides, building being destroyed and so on, there will be a cost to this, a significant cost. And we talk about the contingent liabilities of government, where yes, we are in this hydrometeorological period where a lot of those things do happen, and it is one of those things that government will have to continue to plan for, but you really don't know the extent of those sort of impacts. But what we can see from this one is one that it's going to cost some money as it relates to the roads that have been washed away, the bridges that have been impacted. We still have the heightened period of the hurricane season to come, which is middle of August and up to end of September. God forbid we want to be impacted by a hurricane, but that is the course that we have to take, and we take every year. I want to speak specifically to our public officers as it relates to what we have to do in bouncing back. They get off early because we want to ensure that they go home and secure their places and so on. they had to secure their equipment before they leave, because you don't want the waters or anything to impact that. But it will mean that when we get back to our various stations, the assessment that has to be done, and critically, the decision that has to be made as it relates to what we need to do to mitigate against some of those impacts that we have seen. Because there are some of those things that happen, the flooding and so forth, we can mitigate against them. If there are block drains, we're asking persons, and we're asking our public officers to be eyes and ears for NaDMA, of course. We have district committees, but where you see those things, you can call in to the district committee or to NaDMA itself and say what we have seen. So at least we can ensure that those areas that is prone to create problems like flooding and the likes, we can address them. Secondly, as it relates to we ourselves, how we treat with disasters. I mean, many a times persons will look to be a part, to see what is happening and to get into harm's way. We have to be, again, the eyes and ears for the Royal Grenada Police Force to advise our persons, our people, you need to get off. You need to stay away. You need to give the authorities the opportunity to move and move quickly. It is one thing to respond to a genuine case of flooding, but where you have persons trying to get into a flooded area created a bigger problem for our emergency operators. So it's a call for all of us, because it's an opportunity for us to learn lessons from this, and with those lessons we can help our young ones to realize that flood water is dangerous. And there's one thing that as we talk about flood waters, you will never know the extent of the road, the destruction on the road, if water is running on it. We assume it is okay until we venture into it and realize a ditch has been created and you have no control. A few years ago, Minister Bowen almost lost his wife in the River Road area in the car, and we know what would have happened with the waters in the River Road area. And luckily, there were some brave young men who got her out of the vehicle. Folks, running water in a road is dangerous. Let's stay away from it. And I want to end by saying this: let's stay away from those areas that could create problem. Even driving on the road with all this water in the soil is another problem. We can have slides. And if you can stay away, stay home, stay indoors, please do that. Only if it is necessary, absolutely necessary to get out, you get out. But at this point in time, we need to start looking at protecting ourselves.